Hi everyone. I'm Mumu from Susan's family. Today I'm bringing you a new design. The Windchaser yoke sweater from Retro Nostalgia series. This sweater is divided into the yoke, front back difference, body, hems, sleeves and collar sections. Note, the finished product uses 2 strands of yarn together. You can take yarn from 2 skeins, or take from the center and outer ring of 1 skein simultaneously, and use them together as 1 strand. Because every iron's tension is different, the size of the work piece will vary. Before starting the main project, you need to make a gauge sample to measure your tension. For the specific gauge sample chart and dimensions, please refer to the corresponding pattern chart. After measuring, adjust according to the video instructions, then continue knitting. Now let's learn the method for making a gauge sample. Please watch the demonstration. Today I'll show you how to make a gauge sample. Because every iron's tension is different, the size of the work piece will vary. To ensure the final dimensions are consistent, before starting the main project, use the corresponding yarn. Knit a gauge sample with straight needles. Measure the size of the fabric piece. In the corresponding product pattern chart, there will be a gauge sample diagram or specified dimensions. If the measurements differ significantly, you can change the needle size or adjust your tension. Let's look at the fabric piece diagram. In the chart, 1 vertical line represents a knit stitch. To make the image less crowded, blank squares in the chart also represent knit stitches, which show the knit texture on the right side. This is the stockinette stitch pattern. One thing to note: fabric pieces are worked back and forth. The chart reflects the texture on the right side of the piece. On the wrong side, you need to work the opposite stitch. Now watch me demonstrate the specific technique. To make it easier to see clearly, I'll demonstrate the method using chunky yarn. If the project uses 2 strands of yarn, the method is the same. Simply hold the 2 strands together as one. To make it easier to handle the yarn for the gauge swatch later, it's recommended to take yarn from the outside of the skein. First, cast on. Use the method of casting on while knitting knit stitches. Make a slip knot with the yarn. Hold the straight needle in your left hand. Insert into the loop. Gently tighten. This is the first stitch. This stitch is a knit stitch. Hold the other needle in your right hand with a pencil grip. Pick up the other needle. Then wrap the yarn tail around your right pinky once. Gently pinch the yarn with your ring finger and middle finger. Place the yarn between your index finger and middle finger. This is the proper posture for holding knitting needles. If using circular needles, use the same method to place the loops onto one end of the needle. Then position it on your left side. Pick up the other end of the needle with your right hand, and wrap the yarn accordingly. I'll continue knitting with straight needles here. The circular needle method is identical. Next, insert the right needle from top to bottom into the loop on the left needle. Use your right index finger to guide the yarn. Yarn over. Pick up the stitch. Place it onto the left needle. Don't pull the yarn too tight, otherwise it'll be hard to pick up stitches later. This is the second stitch. Continue casting on. Insert the right needle from top to bottom between these 2 loops. Yarn over. Pick up the stitch. Place it onto the left needle. This is the third stitch. Don't pull the yarn too tight. It's okay to be slightly loose. Continue casting on. Insert the right needle between these two stitches. From top to bottom. Yarn over. Pick up the stitch. Place it onto the left needle. This is the fourth stitch. Each insertion point should be knit stitch between two loops. Refer to the chart for the exact number of stitches. My swatch has a random stitch count here. I'll continue casting on a few more stitches. After reaching the required number of stitches, look here, this is the effect after completing the cast on. This demonstration only shows the method. Fewer stitches are used here. Now begin knitting row 1. Read this chart from right to left for this row. The chart shows all vertical symbols, indicating all knit stitches. Insert the right needle from top to bottom into the first loop on the left needle. Pay attention to inserting into the loop itself, not between two loops. Yarn over. Pick up. While releasing the loop on the left needle. This is the first stitch. Next, knit the second stitch. Insert the right needle from top to bottom into the loop on the left needle. Yarn over. Pick up. Release the loop on the left needle. The second knit stitch is finished. Continue to knit the third stitch. Insert from top to bottom into the loop. Yarn over. Pick up. Release the loop. The third stitch is finished. Knit each stitch one by one in this row. Finished knitting all loops on the left needle. This marks the end of the row. If the loop of the last stitch is too loose, gently tighten the yarn tail. Now the first row is complete. You can use the starting yarn tail to identify right and wrong sides. The side where the starting yarn tail is on the left-hand side is the right side of the piece. Otherwise, it's the wrong side. Next, knit the second row. This row is worked on the wrong side. Turn the piece over and place it in your left hand. This row's chart is read from left to right. It shows knit stitch symbols again, but since we're working on the wrong side, we need to work the opposite stitch. Knit all stitches as purl. Position the right needle below the yarn. Then move upwards to insert into the first loop on the left needle. Yarn over. Pick up. Release the loop on the left needle. The purl stitch is complete. Continue moving upwards. Insert into the first loop on the left needle. Yarn over. Pick up. Release the loop. The second purl stitch is complete. Repeat this process. Finish the remaining stitches. Complete the last stitch. The second row is complete. Continue to work row 3. This row is worked on the right side. Turn the work. Knit all stitches. Complete this row. Here, refer to the pattern chart. You can also work according to the texture. The chain below forms this braid shape. This is the knit stitch texture. When you see knit stitch texture, work knit stitch. Complete the last stitch. Row 3 is complete. Now work row 4. Turn the work. Work the opposite stitch technique from the chart. Purl all stitches. You can also work according to the texture. There's a horizontal bar underneath the loop. When it's above the current loop. This is the purl stitch texture. When you see purl stitch texture, work purl stitch. Complete the last stitch. Row 4 is complete. Here's a method to count rows. Count from the right side of the piece. You can see. On the right side of the piece, you'll see columns of braids. Count how many braids are in one column. The cast-on row doesn't count as a row, meaning the bottom braids aren't included. Start counting from the first braid above. One, two, three. There are 3 braids total. The loops on the needle count as a row. Adding the loops on the needle. This makes a total of 4 rows worked. This is how to count rows. Continue with the same method. Knit all stitches on the right side. Purl on the wrong side. Keep working until you reach the row number on the chart. Complete this part on your own. Once you've reached the corresponding row count, lay the fabric piece flat. Take out a ruler or gauge tool. Measure the work piece. Here's a swatch to demonstrate the measuring method. When measuring, be mindful not to stretch the fabric piece. Just lay it flat. Measure horizontally first. Remember to skip the first and last 5 stitches from the 6th column of chains. Measure all the way to the other side, the sixth column of chains from the edge inward. Then measure vertically. From underneath the straight needle, the sixth row of chains from the bottom. Down 2. The sixth row of chains from the bottom. This is the method of measuring with a ruler. The measured area is approximately 10 times 10 centimeters. If using a density gauge to measure, place it at the centered position of the fabric piece. Then count the number of chains horizontally, which corresponds to the stitch count. Count the number of chains vertically, which corresponds to the row count. If there's a significant difference from the data or dimensions indicated on the pattern, to actually achieve the sample size, you can change the needle size while crocheting, or adjust your tension. After measuring, remove the needles, unravel the fabric piece, simply wind the yarn tails back onto the skein. For yarns that are difficult to unravel, pick up the new yarn to continue crocheting. Complete this part on your own. This is the method for making a gauge swatch. Start by crocheting the yoke. Use the waste yarn cast-on technique. Work in the round using stocking stitch, while increasing stitches throughout the process. Simultaneously work the colorwork pattern. Now let's take a look at the chart. Here I'll use an arbitrary size chart as an example. The final chart should match the actual project you receive. The chart is presented in this grid format. Each square in the chart represents one stitch, corresponding to one loop when crocheting. Squares of different colors correspond to different yarns. Blank areas. These are gaps formed by increases. If there are omission symbols, they indicate skipped positions. When counting the number of stitches per round, simply count the number of squares. Then match with the number of loops on your straight needle. The numbers on the side of the chart indicate round numbers. Arrows show the crocheting direction. When the arrow points from right to left, it means crocheting on the right side. The chart is also viewed from right to left. Stitch techniques used in the crocheting process will be marked accordingly on the chart. I won't go through each example one by one here. Now watch me demonstrate the specific crocheting method. Start with a chain stitch. Take a yarn color different from the first round squares. Note that the finished product uses 2 strands of yarn as one. For the swatch, to make it easier to watch, I'm using 1 strand of cotton yarn for demonstration. When I mention 1 strand, later, it actually corresponds to 2 strands. The swatch uses random colors. For specific yarn, color scheme and hook size, please refer to the detail page of our product and paper instructions. Everyone pay attention to use the corresponding needle size for knitting. Here we use the contrasting color method for casting on. After completing the cast on, use the yarn corresponding to the first round squares to knit 1 round of knit stitches. For specific casting on and first round techniques, please refer to the video demonstration below. First, take a yarn color different from the chart's first round. Color scheme for casting on. Make a slip knot with the yarn. Place it on the needle. This is the first stitch. Pick up another needle with your right hand. Begin casting on. The loop on the left needle is the second stitch. Continue to cast on the third stitch. The fourth stitch. You can make the loop slightly loose here. Otherwise it will be hard to pick up stitches later. Continue casting on using this method. 5 stitches. 6 stitches. Look everyone. After casting on the corresponding number of stitches, there's still a loop on the right needle. Leave about 10 centimeters of yarn tail and cut the yarn. Stretch the loop on the right needle. Pull the yarn tail through the loop. Tighten. Make a knot below this strand to mark it. This casting on is done. The actual number of stitches is larger. Pay attention to prevent the loops from slipping off on both sides. Next, knit the first round. Transfer the cast on needle to the left hand. Note that the marked yarn tail is on the right side. Take out the corresponding yarn. I'm using random color combinations here. Make a slip knot ready for use. Pick up a needle with your right hand to begin crocheting. Since it's circular knitting, the charts are always read from right to left. The first round shows all blank squares, which means knit all stitches. Insert the right needle downward into the first loop. Place the slip knot loop onto the needle. Gently tighten the tail. Hang the yarn properly with your right hand, then pull the yarn through. Release the loop from the left needle. This is the first stitch. Continue knitting. You can see underneath. It's a braid-like texture. Keep knitting downward. Until you've completed about 1/3 of the total stitches. Now you've finished the required number of stitches. Move the loops to the middle. Then take another needle. Continue knitting. Knit about 1/3 of the stitches. Once completed, take the last needle. Finish the remaining stitches. When done, you'll notice The loops on the needles are now roughly divided evenly across 3 needles. The first round is complete. Next, knit round 2. Here I'll demonstrate with a swatch. Arrange the needles into a triangle shape. Pay attention that the bottom isn't twisted. Position the knit texture facing you. Start knitting from the yarn tail position. Take the 4th needle. Hang the yarn properly. The first stitch is the same color as the first round. Knit with the current color. For demonstration convenience, we call it color 1. First knit 1 stitch with color 1. The first stitch at the needle join, you can knit it slightly tighter. To avoid affecting the finished product's appearance. Next stitch requires switching colors. Take the yarn corresponding to the second needle. We call it color 2. Tie a knot on color 1. Push it to the bottom. Joining the yarn is done. When adding new yarn later, you can join the yarn using this method. Keep color 1 in front. Carry the yarn across color 2. Knit 1 stitch with color 2. Remember to stretch the fabric. Ensure the floating yarn tension is close to the fabric behind. Not too loose or too tight, to avoid affecting the finished product's appearance. Place color 2 behind. Continue carrying color 1 and knit 1 stitch. Pay attention to the yarn tension being just right. After completing, place it in front. Switch to color 2 and knit 1 stitch. You can see this round is worked with these 2 colors. Alternately knitting knit stitches. Creating 2 parallel carried yarn strands behind. You can also keep all yarns behind. Note to untangle them promptly if they get twisted. You can also carry 2 strands with your right hand. Or use the method of alternating hands while carrying yarn for knitting. Choose whichever method suits your habit. Continue knitting downward. Finish the loops on one knitting needle. Continue knitting with the switched needle. Slightly tighten the first stitch. Repeat this process to continue knitting. Finish the loops on the right side of the yarn tail for the starting chain. Round 2 is completed. Next, knit round 3. Continue switching colors and knitting knit stitches following the method of round 2. Slightly tighten the first stitch at the junction. You can see these two rounds match up in colors. Mindful that the carried yarn is loose enough. Repeat this process. Complete this round. Finish the loops on the right side of the yarn tail. Round 3 is finished. You can see the fabric forms this stockinette stitch texture. On the third needle, mark the front side facing you with a stitch marker. If you don't have a stitch marker, you can use a safety pin or paper clip instead. Finish the loops on the needle corresponding to the stitch marker. This marks the completion of the round. On the needle, refer to the chart to separate each group with stitch markers. This makes it convenient to check the stitch count and increase placement later. The swatch has fewer stitches here. Please pay attention to the actual project as the reference. Continue to knit round 4. Start with one single crochet increase. Note that you need to switch colors when increasing. Start with color 2. Pick up the left side loop below the braid. The right strand. Knit 1 stitch. This is the increased stitch. Then use color 1. Insert the hook into this loop and knit 1 stitch. The right increase is done, and 2 corresponding color loops are created. Continue to knit stitches alternately. When reaching the last stitch of this group, knit the left increase. First knit 1 stitch with color 2. Then use color 1. Pick up the second braid below the left strand, which is here. Place it on the left needle. Knit 1 stitch. This completes the left increase and creates the corresponding color loop. Group completed. Continue to the second group. Move the stitch marker forward. First knit the right increase. With color 2, pick up the right strand of the braid below. Knit the stitch. Then knit 1 stitch with color 1. Right increase completed. Continue alternating knit stitches. Reach the last stitch of this group. Knit 1 left increase. First knit 1 stitch with color 2. Pick up the left strand of the second braid below. Knit 1 stitch with color 1. Left increase completed. Second group is done. Continue using the same method for each group. Refer to the chart to finish this round. Once completed, the fourth round is finished. Check the stitch count. The wrong side forms this texture. When counting rounds, you can count these braid-like textures. The bottom is formed by the starting chain. Start counting from the color section corresponding to the first round. The loops on the needle also count as one round. This swatch has 4 rounds knitted here. Continue crocheting in the round by following the pattern chart later. Increase stitches at the corresponding round number, forming the striped ferrule pattern. Pay attention to rounds 10 to 11. The pattern changes here. Skip 3 stitches with color 1. Knit 1 stitch with color 2. When crocheting, make sure the tension of the carried yarn on the wrong side is loose enough. Complete this part. The number of rounds in this swatch is not for reference. Now I'll demonstrate round 12. This round uses color 1. Color 2 will be used much later. Leave a 10 cm yarn tail, and cut the yarn. Later, you can weave it in along the texture on the wrong side. You can weave in a few extra stitches. Trim excess tail. Start with 1 right increase stitch. No need to switch colors here. Simply pick up the loop underneath and knit 1 stitch. Then insert into the loop and knit 1 stitch. Continue following the pattern chart. Once done, round 12 is complete. Continue with the ferrule pattern on round 13. I'll demonstrate using circular needles. As the number of rounds increases in the yoke section, the fabric gets larger. When knitting, Adjust according to your situation. At the proper position, switch to circular needles for knitting. Prevent loops from slipping off straight needles. The fair isle technique is similar to before. Here I'll demonstrate the method for single crochet increase without switching colors. Knit 1 knit stitch. Pay attention to the floating yarn tension, then pick up the second loop below and knit 1 stitch. The single crochet increase is done. When you encounter increases later, refer to the chart squares, and knit according to the colors. Continue to finish this round. After completing, between the first and last stitch, mark with a stitch marker in a distinctive color. Knit the loops to the right of the stitch marker, indicating the end of the round. Round 13 is completed. For the subsequent rounds of the yoke, continue crocheting the colorwork pattern in rounds. You'll encounter irregular colorwork like this, with longer floating yarns. Here's a method for crocheting colorwork in rounds. Once you've learned the technique, refer to the pattern chart to complete it. Cut the yarn that won't be used later in the crocheting process, and weave in the ends promptly. Pay attention to the number of rounds for larger sizes, where the yoke continues with solid color yarn. Switch to the corresponding size circular needle for crocheting. Don't cut the yarn after completing the final round. For specific colorwork techniques, please watch the demonstration. I'll demonstrate the method of crocheting colorwork in rounds. Different colorwork patterns. Use similar techniques. The sample swatch features random color schemes and patterns. I'll only explain the method. You can first watch my demonstration, then follow the corresponding chart for crocheting. Colorwork rounds require multiple yarn colors. For convenience of explanation, we'll refer to the currently used yarn color as color 1. First, knit 3 stitches with color 1. Note that both my stitch count and color scheme are random here. Just learn the technique. I won't repeat this explanation later. Next stitch requires switching colors. Take color 2. Leave about 10 centimeters of length. Make a knot on color 1. Pull tight. Then move this knot to the base of color 1. Note: the joining knot should be on the wrong side of the piece. Don't let it show on the right side. For future yarn joining situations, you can join the yarn using this method. Now start knitting the fair isle pattern with these 2 colors. There are 2 scenarios when knitting fair isle. If the number of stitches for color 1 and color 2 is small, no more than 5 stitches, simply switch colors and knit. If the number of stitches is larger, more than 5 stitches, then you need to carry the other yarn in the middle. Now demonstrate when the number of consecutive stitches is small. Method of switching colors without carrying the yarn. First, knit 2 knit stitches with color 2. After completing, switch to color 1, and knit 3 knit stitches. Release color 2, place it behind the fabric. Hang color 1 properly. Color 1 is above color 2. Knit the knit stitch. Pay attention not to pull the carried yarn too tight, to prevent shrinkage of the fabric. After finishing, gently stretch the fabric. Keep the fabric flat. Continue switching to color 2 and knit 2 knit stitches. When knitting, pay attention that color 1 is above color 2. After completing, switch to color 1, and knit 3 knit stitches. Stretch the fabric. These 2 yarns, one is above, one is below. The position remains unchanged. Knit back and forth alternately. Let me demonstrate a few more stitches. Follow the method shown in the video. Normally these 2 yarns won't get tangled. If when you're knitting, the yarns cross, straighten them out in time. This is the method without carrying the yarn. Directly switching colors while knitting. When the number of stitches knitted continuously with one yarn equals 2 or more than 5 stitches, because the distance is longer. Every 2-3 stitches, you need to carry the other yarn. I'll continue using this swatch to demonstrate the carrying method. First knit 1 stitch with color 2. Then knit 11 stitches with color 1. Place color 2 on top of the piece. Hang yarn end of color 1. Knit 3 stitches first. Carry the yarn once. Put color 2 behind the piece. Then knit 3 stitches with color 1. Carry the yarn again. Place color 2 on top of the piece. Continue knitting 3 stitches with color 1. Carry the yarn once. Finish the remaining 2 stitches with color 1. Stretch the fabric and the carried yarn. Check the wrong side of the fabric. When knitting 11 stitches with color 1, carried color 2 3 times. Let me demonstrate again. Switch to color 2 and knit 7 stitches. Leave color 1 behind. Knit 3 stitches with color 2 first. Place color 1 on top of the piece. Then knit 2 more stitches. Put color 1 behind the piece. Continue to knit the remaining 2 stitches. You can see. When knitting 7 stitches with color 2, carried color 1 twice. Stretch the piece and the carried yarn. Keep the fabric flat. Let's look at the color change pattern here. For long distance color changes of 5 or more stitches, skip 2 to 3 stitches between carries. Bring the yarn to the right position. No need to carry the yarn when the interval is less than 5 stitches. If you notice the 2 yarns crossing during the crocheting process, be sure to untangle them right away. Pay attention after carrying the yarn. Always stretch the fabric immediately. To prevent the carried yarn from being too tight or too loose, which affects the appearance, I'll demonstrate a few more stitches below. This is an example of continuously working with one yarn for more than 5 stitches. Another method for carrying yarn while crocheting. During the crocheting process, some rounds require working with 3 colors simultaneously. Join color 3. Alternate crocheting using the same technique. Pay attention during the crocheting process, if 2 colors are alternated while working. And the interval for the third color exceeds 5 stitches. When switching colors, don't forget to secure that yarn. If the number of stitches worked in one color exceeds 5 stitches, you can secure the other 2 yarns simultaneously in between. This is the stranded colorwork technique when using more than 2 yarns. The stranded colorwork method. If a contrasting color yarn won't be used for more than 10 rounds, it will be needed again later. You can cut the yarn leaving a 10 cm tail. The yarn tail can later be woven into the wrong side of the fabric following the texture. When you reach the joining position, simply rejoin the yarn using the previous method, and continue knitting. If the interval between appearances of a contrasting color yarn is fewer than 10 rounds, there's no need to cut it. Just carry it along to the corresponding position while knitting. I'll demonstrate this with a small swatch, showing the technique of carrying yarn between rounds. Temporarily place color 2 behind the fabric piece. Then alternate between color 1 and color 3 for the next 2 rounds. Now work the third round, carrying color 2 along this round. Bring color 2 to the front of the fabric piece. Knit 1 stitch with color 3. Color 2 is now properly carried. Continue knitting 2 more rounds with color 1 and color 3. Keep color 2 behind the fabric piece during this time. Let's examine the pattern of carrying yarn between rounds. Carry the yarn every 2 rounds, specifically on the first stitch. There's no need to carry it every round. Carry the yarn to the corresponding round number as needed. Up to this point, the technique for circular stranded knitting is now complete. With this, the yoke section is now finished. Next, let's learn about the front-back difference knitting. The front-back difference is worked in specific areas of the yoke section, back and forth. From the right side, it appears as a plain stitch pattern. When actually knitting, the wrong side should be worked with stitch techniques opposite to the chart. Watch me demonstrate the specific knitting method. Before knitting, first divide the sections. I'll demonstrate using this small sample. This sample has fewer stitches and rounds, mainly demonstrating the technique. First, identify the corresponding positions of the front and back bodies, and left and right sleeves. Mark out the corresponding positions. Here, left and right refer to when the garment is worn. First, count the stitch count for the back body. The stitch count in this sample is random. Refer to the chart for specific stitch counts. Place a stitch marker to mark the position. Next are the sleeves and front body. The remaining part is the other sleeve. You can check the stitch count. This completes the section division. Now knit the first row of the front-back difference. Read the chart from right to left. Knit stitches directly corresponding to the back body position. I'll continue demonstrating with the small sample. Knit the last stitch before the left stitch marker. Row 1 is complete. On the right side of the piece, place a stitch marker on any chain below the needle. The needle holds row 1. This makes counting rows easier later. Next, knit row 2. This row is worked on the wrong side. Turn the wrong side toward you. Watch the chart from left to right. All knit stitch symbols. Work the opposite stitch here. Place the needle under the yarn tail. Knit all purl stitches. Continue knitting until the loops on the right side of the left stitch marker. Row 2 is complete. For the following rows, knit in the back body area on the right side. Purl on the wrong side. Refer to the chart. Knit to the row number corresponding to the front-back difference. End on the wrong side. The row count here is random in the swatch. When counting rows, start counting from the chain above the stitch marker. The loops on the needle count as 1 row. This is the method for the front-back difference. Next, learn about the body. The body is worked in the front section of the yoke and joined with the front-back difference by working in the round. Increases are needed at the underarm position. A fair awl pattern needs to be knitted at the ending. The new stitch technique used is whip stitch. Please watch my demonstration of the specific method. First, knit the first round. Here I'll continue using this small sample for demonstration, only demonstrating the method. The rest is not for reference. First, Knit each stitch one by one on the back body position. After completing, put the corresponding number of loops on the right sleeve on hold. Cut a longer yarn tail. Thread the needle. Insert the needle from right to left. Insert the hook into the loops on the left needle. Slip the loops off. After completing, tie the 2 yarn tails with a slip knot. The loops on hold are for the right sleeve. The stitch marker here can be removed. Next, we'll do the increases. Here, use the whip stitch method to increase. First, increase the first stitch. Place your right index finger above the yarn. Make a clockwise turn to form crossing loops. Slide this loop up onto the right needle. Tighten it slightly. This is the whip stitch increase. Continue to increase one more stitch. Place your index finger above the yarn. After yarn over, slide it up onto the right needle. The whip stitch increase is done. Continue increasing the corresponding number of stitches. The stitch count for the sample increase is random. After completing, place a marker on the right side in the middle. Place a stitch marker on the loop of this whip stitch increase. The sample increase is completed. Next, crochet the front body. Knit each stitch one by one. Finish crocheting the front body position. Similarly, put the loops corresponding to the left sleeve on hold. Use the whip stitch increase method to increase stitches. Pay attention to the right side in the middle. Mark the loop of this whip stitch increase. This completes the first round. Similarly, mark underneath the needle. Convenient for counting rounds later. Next, crochet the second round. Move the stitch marker marking the starting position to the right needle. Then knit each stitch one by one. Pay attention when crocheting at the whip stitch increase position. Don't pull the yarn too tight. Keep it as loose as possible when knitting. Keep the distance between the two needles from being too far. Prevent the carrying yarn across in the middle from being too long. If you get longer segments like this, it's normal. It won't affect the crocheting process. Stitch marker position. Place the stitch marker in front. If during the crocheting process, if the loops on the left needle accidentally fall off, you can take the short section of yarn between these two needles, wrap it clockwise around the middle once, and put this loop back onto the left needle. This way, the loops are restored. Continue knitting them until done. After finishing, round 2 is complete. For the rounds on the back of the body, continue crocheting stocking stitch in rounds. Here, since every ounce crochet tension differs, the number of rounds in the solid color section of the chart is for reference only. You can knit to the corresponding length according to the chart. Then switch needles to knit the ferrule pattern. The method is similar to the ferrule technique used in the yoke section. Complete it by referring to the chart. That concludes the explanation for the body. Next, let's learn about the hem. Continue knitting 2 by 2 ribbing in rounds from the body. Remember to switch to the corresponding size circular needle here. Finally, finish off with single rib bind off. The new stitch technique used is the purl stitch. Watch me demonstrate the specific knitting method. I'll demonstrate the 2 by 2 ribbing technique using a swatch here. Remember to switch needles when knitting an actual project. For this swatch demonstration, I won't switch needles. Start with the first round. Begin by knitting 2 knit stitches. Then purl 2 purl stitches. Pay attention to changing the yarn position. Continue knitting 2 knit stitches. Two purl stitches. Two knit stitches in this pattern, alternating with 2 purl stitches. Complete this round. Finish the loops on the right of the marker. The first round is done. Place a marker underneath to mark. Convenient for counting rounds. Continue to knit round 2. Same method as the first round. Two knit stitches, alternating with 2 purl stitches. You can follow the texture pattern. Knit the knit stitches when you see them. When you see the purl texture, correspondingly knit the purl stitches. Continue to complete this round. Round 2 is completed. Continue knitting subsequent rounds using the same method as round 2. Finally finish off with single rib bind off. For the specific finishing method, please watch the demonstration. After completing the final round, perform single rib bind off. The method is to alternate with the opposite stitch technique of knit and purl, and bind off. Because it's worked on 2x2 ribbing, you need to switch the position of the loops while knitting. Create alternating knit and purl stitches before binding off. First knit 2 stitches opposite to the texture below. Here it's knit stitch texture, so knit 2 purl stitches. Then pass the previous stitch over the next stitch. Remember not to bind off too tight. This finishes off 1 stitch. Next the left side shows purl stitch texture. Knit 1 stitch opposite to the texture below, which means knit 1 knit stitch. Before knitting, pinch the bottom of the right side loop with your left hand first. Take the needle out. Place it above the yarn and back into the loop. Then knit a knit stitch. Then pass the previous stitch over the next stitch. This finishes off another stitch. Next the left side still shows purl stitch texture. First swap the positions of the 2 loops on the left. Move these 2 loops onto the right needle. Then insert the left needle into the first loop from behind. Release the loop. Pick up the second loop with the right needle. Move them back to the left needle. Now the 2 loops have swapped positions. The knit stitch loop is in front here. Knit 1 purl stitch here. Before knitting, take the needle out. Place it below the yarn and back into the loop. After completing, knit 1 purl stitch. Finish 1 stitch. Next, the left side shows purl stitch. Knit one more stitch. Place the yarn below and back into the loop. Knit the stitch. Then finish one stitch. The 2 stitches on the left are perfectly one knit stitch, one purl stitch, corresponding to the opposite stitch technique. Meaning you always knit the opposite stitch pattern of the left side texture. Remember to always change the position of the yarn tail by moving the right needle to adjust the yarn tail position. When purling, the yarn is on top. When knitting, the yarn is below. Swap the positions of the 2 loops on the left. The knit loop is in front. Move both loops to the right needle. Then the left needle picks up the first loop from behind. The right needle picks up the second loop and moves it to the left needle. After swapping positions, continue with the opposite stitch and bind off. Repeat this process until you finish the entire round. After completing the last stitch, pull up a large loop. Leave a 10 cm yarn tail, and cut the yarn. Then thread the yarn tail through the loop. Finally, weave in the ends. If there's a large gap on the left side, you can sew a few stitches. Weave in the ends along the texture. This completes the binding off demonstration. This finishes the hem explanation. Next we'll learn about the sleeves. The left and right sleeves are knitted similarly. Both involve picking up stitches around the cuff edge, divided into sleeve body and sleeve cuff. Please watch my demonstration of the specific technique. Let's start with the right sleeve. I'll continue demonstrating with this small sample. Knit the first round first. The previously resting stitch loops. Place them back on the needle. Insert the hook from right to left into the loops. Distribute them approximately onto 2 needles. Position the loops in the middle. Then start picking up stitches from the whip stitch increase point. Take the yarn. The sample has random colors. Tie a slip knot with the yarn tail. Hang it properly on the right hand. As you can see, there are columns of braids at the whip stitch increase position. Below the braids there are 2 crossing strands. Take the third needle. Insert into the 2 crossing strands corresponding to the left side of the stitch marker position. Rotate the fabric. Pick out the knotted loop. Adjust the loop size. This is the first stitch of the first round of the sleeve body. Next, insert the needle into the 2 strands corresponding to the adjacent braid on the left side. The stitch marker can be removed. Yarn over and draw through. This is the second stitch. Continue picking up the left whip stitch increase position. Now we've reached the side seam for the front back difference. You can see there are little braids like this along the edge. Next to them, there are gaps between 2 stitches. Insert the hook into the chain space in the gap. Pick up the corresponding number of stitches evenly. Pay attention when picking up. Pick up 1-2 stitches at the corner to ensure there are no large gaps at the corner. Then pick up stitches from the chain spaces in the side seam gaps. After picking up the chain spaces along the side seam, pick up one stitch at the final corner. Check the stitch count after completing. In this swatch, there are fewer rows for the front-back difference, fewer stitches to pick up. Next, work the corresponding stitch pattern at the resting loop positions. Take the 4th straight needle to crochet. The stitch pattern is random in this swatch. In actual practice, refer to the pattern chart. Continue working them downward. Pay attention to tighten at the needle junction. After finishing the loops at the resting position, continue to pick up the whip stitch increase placement. When picking up the first stitch, be mindful not to create a small hole. You can pick up one adjacent strand along with it. This completes the picking up of stitches for the sleeve body. Fewer stitches to pick up in this swatch. Refer to the pattern chart for the actual number of stitches to pick up. Next, adjust the position of the loops. Distribute them roughly evenly across 3 straight needles. Note that the first and last loops should not be moved. Next, on the 3rd straight needle, place a stitch marker below. Finish working the loops on this straight needle. This marks the completion of a full round. When counting rounds, start counting from above the stitch marker. This completes the first round. Continue working stocking stitch in the round for the sleeve body. Note that the number of rounds for solid color is for reference only. Follow the pattern chart to reach the corresponding length. And decrease stitches in the final round of solid color. This introduces a new stitch technique, K2 tog. Refer to the demonstration video below for the specific technique. First, learn how to knit 2 stitches together, K2 tog, also known as K2 tog. When knitting, move the right needle from left to right. Pass through both loops at the same time. Knit 1 knit stitch. This completes the K2 tog. You'll notice the left loop is above the right loop. After finishing the solid color section, continue to follow the pattern chart for stranded color work, using the same method as the body section. Complete it by referring to the chart. That concludes the sleeve body explanation. Continue knitting the cuff edge in the round with 2x2 ribbing. The technique is similar to the hem. Remember to switch to the corresponding hook size for knitting. Decrease stitches at the corresponding position in the first round. Still maintaining the 2x2 ribbing texture, continue knitting 2x2 ribbing in the following rounds. Finally, bind off with single ribbing, using the same method as the hem finishing. Refer to the previous demonstration. Complete it by following the pattern chart. That concludes the right sleeve explanation. The left sleeve is knitted in the same way as the right sleeve. First, transfer the resting loops back onto the needle. I've already threaded them in advance. After completion, take out the yarn tail and the third needle. At the whip stitch increase position, start picking up stitches from the stitch marker mark. Be mindful not to create a hole when picking up the last stitch. You can pick up one extra strand to the left. Then knit the corresponding stitch technique on the needle loops. Next, evenly pick up the required number of stitches on the front-back difference. Pay attention to pick up stitches at both ends corners. Don't leave any holes. Finally, pick up the remaining stitches at the whip stitch increase position. After completing the picking up, adjust the loops. Just make them roughly evenly distributed. When adjusting, keep the first and last stitch positions unchanged. Place a stitch marker below the third needle. The following technique is identical to the right sleeve. Refer to the chart to finish them. This is the method for the left sleeve. After completing, you can remove all stitch markers. Finally, learn the collar. First, at the yoke cast-on edge, pick up stitches with the corresponding needle size. This picking up method can be referenced in the video demonstration below. Before knitting, you need to pick up stitches first. Here I'll demonstrate using a swatch. Everyone should follow their actual project. You can watch my demonstration first, then proceed. With the wrong side of the piece facing you, locate the yarn tail at the end of the cast-on. Which is the knotted yarn tail? Carefully undo this part. Be gentle while undoing. Insert the circular needle through the loop from the right side. Meaning the loop from the first round of knitting. Then, undo the magic ring loop. Slightly slower, to prevent the loops from slipping off. Continue inserting through the loops from the right side. Undo the magic ring loop. Pick up stitches. Undo the yarn. From the right side, the loops have this texture. Repeat this process for picking up stitches. Don't miss the last loop. Turn the fabric to the right side. This completes the picking up of stitches. Check the number of stitches, which should match the starting chain count. After completing the picking up of stitches, work in the round with 2x2 ribbing. Finish with a single rib bind off. Follow the same method as the hem. Refer to the chart to complete it. This concludes the collar explanation. Up to this point, the entire garment has been explained. If you still have unclear parts during the crocheting process, please let me know. Don't hesitate to join our Facebook group to get supports. Susan's Family, supporting your handwork experience, sharing the joy of life. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.